I think the reality is that lots of people identify as trans and have different degrees of dysphoria, or they might not even consider one thing dysphoria that you consider dysphoria, and vice versa.
When you refer to trans communities, are you primarily referring to online trans communities, or are you also referring to like the IRL communities around you?
I'm referring mostly to online communities. I think that this exists within real life communities, but I think the funny, well, maybe not funny, the tragic thing about online communities is that they tend to amplify neuroses. And one person who can be totally reasonable in real life can be fucking insane on the internet. I mean, to an extent, like, I think this is true of me. And part of that is just like informational bandwidth and the noise associated with posting online, which is your full expression and perspective doesn't get captured. And that leads to this kind of toxicity and desire to interpret things negatively, and then also to like amplify negative perspectives. So I want to push back on this negativity, but also like realistically, I'm a part of it as well. And I think being able to recognize when you are a part of it and you're contributing negatively is important. And I've certainly been guilty of that. And so, yeah, I think people can be totally reasonable in real life, and then they can go online and they can have like one bad day and they can say like, you know, a negative thing, or you know, they can come down on someone hard for something. And that's really easy to do online. And I think, unfortunately, it means that online communities tend to be pretty toxic in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I would resonate with that. And, you know, additionally, like seeing other people be neurotic sometimes inspires neurotic thought loops inside as well. Like if you see people dysphoria spiraling, it's very easy to like attach yourself to that and like also spiral.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, absolutely.
No, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, like, sometimes you can see someone who's doing really well and compare yourself negatively.
Yeah.
So
it's like the same thing. Yeah, definitely. Just that comparison is really often a negative thing. But I guess one thing I was curious is if you think a lot of that is built out of, I hate to say like early transition, heightened emotions, but like you mentioned earlier with the autosexuality idea, there's like that period of passion, right? Where you're like discovering this thing and it's new and it's fun and exciting. And then like there's a more like sustainable like companionship aspect of autosexuality. Oh, I'm asking is, do you think that a lot of the negative aspects of the trans community are due to people in the like passion phase, or like, because earlier when you were giving your example, you even mentioned somebody who's like 3 months on hormones. The feeling I'm getting is that it's early tranners. So like I want to ask for clarification or correction.
Yeah, that's an interesting hypothesis that I had not really considered. I mean, like, if we take the autosexuality theory seriously, then there's an extent to which, like, if you criticize people early in transition, you're criticizing like someone that they are deeply and passionately in love with. And when you're deeply and passionately in love with someone, you don't really see the flaws. You're just excited for the present and even for like this idealized future that you imagine with this person. And so like maybe that informs it in some way, the strong reactions and the heated emotions that people have. I don't know if that's true, but I mean, I think that like if people are similar to me and that they have this kind of like autosexual experience, then yeah, maybe that is a part of it, and that is like to an extent why people get so heated. It's always hard to generalize from your own experience, but yeah, I think that's plausible and something I hadn't thought about.
Are you ready for the next questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think I should probably get out of here pretty soon.
Oh my gosh, you have to go soon?
Yeah, I'll give you like a 10-minute, but
there's like 7 questions left, but
okay, get to the hardest, most controversial, difficult.
Okay, how about I read them and you shoot the one that you want, okay?
Okay.
Your view on the future of trans rights, how you feel about public coverage of trans healthcare, gatekeeping in the past versus now. Do you have any advice for incelibate men, specifically like in relation to transmaxing? Do you think, you know, incels should transition? Do you have any thoughts about the incel to trans pipeline in general, or how incel terminology has been spilling over to normies? What do you think about trans representation, more or less or different? Do normies know too much about trannies nowadays? Ask you how to get trans people online to empathize with the incel issue and men's issues. You know, a lot of people are focused on incels here. Do you feel alienated from trans communities, and do you feel bad about that or not? And then, are you transmed? Do you believe that transmaxing can be defended and justified in the same way as transgender bodily autonomy? Okay, there you go. Which one do you want? Or you can even combine them if you want, if you can think of like ways to answer multiple at the same time.
Oh God, part of the problem here is that like I've strongly held values, but I don't have strongly held beliefs. So I feel very strongly about what I believe is like good and true. But to the extent that that's like applicable to the world, I tend to be like very cautious. Like I don't exactly know what is true about the nature of like trans healthcare. Like I'm not sure if taking hormones reliably improves mental health. And I think that's the general consensus from like academics. Like you can read these meta-analyses of studies where they will say the effect is positive on mental health in all of these ways, but our confidence is low. And also, we just have a high degree of uncertainty. So that's really how I feel about a lot of these things, where it's like, okay, it seems like maybe there's like a slight positive, but I'm, pretty unconfident about these things.
Yeah.
And so I guess this is like a general answer to a lot of these questions. I think that you have to be answering any of these questions, approaching any of these topics. You have to be willing to be wrong. You have to be willing to be proved wrong. You can't be dogmatic in your beliefs. You have to approach people who disagree with you with a high level of empathy and consideration, because that's not to say that like you are probably wrong, but it is to say that you could be wrong. You should approach every issue as if you could be wrong.
Yeah.
And I would say that like a lot of these things, like inceldom or whatever, they're things that probably seem really important when you spend a lot of time online, and they're important in real life too. But I think the perspectives sometimes that you get, and that I get like some of these questions, I'm trying to answer this in the kind of controversial way, is that a lot of the people are sort of online or maybe like overly online with some of these concerns. Like, should incels transition? Honestly, you should do whatever you want with your body so long as you can take responsibility for the consequences. If you are not in the place psychologically or maturity-wise where you can take responsibility for those consequences, you shouldn't make the decision. And that should be the determining factor, is, am I capable of making a hard, difficult decision that may have long-term consequences? If you are, then I think you should be open to transition. And if you're not, you shouldn't, regardless of, whether you identify as an incel or whatever. And I think that's kind of an underlying principle there. I guess in regards to, do I feel alienated from the trans community? Definitely. But also part of that is just transitioning for so long. You're just in a different space mentally and physically than most people. So yeah, I think gotta approach things cautiously. There's not too much for me to say because I don't have super strong opinions on a lot of them.
Yeah. Okay, well, are you transmed? That one's like an easy yes or no, so.
Oh, am I transmed? Well, okay, how do you define transmed?
I don't know. I didn't ask the question.
Okay, goddamn it. Well, do I think that like you have to have dysphoria to be trans? No, I don't think so. I think that definition of transness that relies on dysphoria is kind of old-fashioned. I think if you asked me like a few years ago, I would say absolutely, you need dysphoria. But I think I've like lost that battle. And I think that when you talk about transness, I think it's probably important to distinguish between people with dysphoria and people without dysphoria. And so I try to be like careful about that in, my own writing. I'll say like people with dysphoria, and then I'll say transness kind of separately, because I think the reality is that lots of people identify as trans and have different degrees of dysphoria, or they might not even consider one thing dysphoria that you consider dysphoria, and vice versa. And I think it just gets messy. So I personally try to be more specific and assume that when I'm saying trans, people are not necessarily picturing someone with a medical condition.
Yeah, I definitely can resonate with that. And then while we're just on the topic, I guess, with transmed, it's like, how do you feel about non-binary people? Or like, specifically like, I don't know, non-medically transitioning? A lot of people just get sticks up their asses about all kinds of different things. So I guess I'm just curious if you have any controversial opinions about NBs.
I mean, I have the exact same opinion that I have for trans people, which is that like, I think you have a right to do what you will with your body and your presentation. And I don't necessarily think you have a right to control people's language or thoughts. And so I think you should do whatever you want. You should take responsibility for those effects. And you should understand that not everyone's going to perceive you in the way you perceive yourself. You should make peace with that. And you should, if it matters to you that people call you they, them, or star, or fae, or whatever, like, I think you can negotiate for that if you want to, but I don't think people are obligated to call you whatever, so you should also accept that that's okay. Not everyone will agree with you, and you should make peace with that.
Can I ask you a controversial question about something that's chronically online? And you can tell me no. It's quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think non-binary people can say tranny?
Yeah, I think so. I think that.
Base take. Okay, I don't want to keep you for too long, but I do just want to ask, like, finishing up, was there anything you wanted me to ask that I didn't? Was there anything you wanted to say that you didn't get the opportunity to? Like, I don't know. Just, was there anything on your side, you know, before?
Not necessarily. I mean, we can always talk again if there's follow-up.
Okay. Well, yeah, in that case, I won't hold you too much longer since you did want to run, but thank you so much for talking with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. It was fun. I definitely went on for a while, so hopefully it wasn't too rambly.
No, I really enjoyed it. I really do like the way that you explain things. I can tell that you have done a lot of thinking about a lot of things, and like you're very articulate with the way that you phrase things. So,
I appreciate that. I try to be, even though I get a little tongue-tied sometimes.
well, yeah, thank you so much. I will not hold you. But yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Thank you. You as well. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.